The Western anime industry has some serious problems, doesn't it? Video streaming keeps crashing in the middle of episodes, and all of these outlets only offer content in a certain number of regions, leaving fans from the rest of the world with no official options. Even still, there's over 18,000 anime titles in existence, yet so many are completely unavailable for streaming, or any kind of distribution for that matter. And given how so many streaming licenses are exclusive, you're probably going to end up needing subscriptions to more services than you actually want. Across the decades, bootlegs and pirates have often filled that void.
But what if there was an all-encompassing service that operated flawlessly, was completely legit, and gave you access to hit anime like Attack on Titan, Sword Art Online, and yes, even Candy Candy? And as the cherry on top, what if you got real-time feedback from an AI waifu that spoke to you in anime speak? Knowing the industry like we do now, it almost seems too good to be true.
That's because it probably is. So for a bit of context, on the 7th of July, a Kickstarter campaign was launched for a streaming app called AnimeTube, not to be confused with AniTube, which is the cesspool of content you are currently in watching this video. It had a lot of ambitious goals to provide the ultimate streaming competitor to the major apps on the market right now. The biggest selling points are that they were in talks of getting thousands of popular anime titles, and that they could be watched purely or mostly off the back of ad revenue, as well as a seemingly solid interface with an ambitious AI element. Initially, AnimeTube got support from popular online comics entity Merryweather, who created a comic and video for the Kickstarter before it launched. The campaign was asking for about $50,000, and to say it was a quick success was an understatement, because within the first couple of hours, it hit 200% of its goal. Obviously, there was a lot of initial support for this idea. However, after that first day...
Oh my god!
AnimeTube was trending on Twitter for a bit, and not necessarily out of glowing support for the app, but more so concern. Apparently, the Kickstarter page referenced Dub Studio's sound cadence and their portfolio, presumably attached to the goal of getting some of the acquired licenses dubbed in English. The day prior to the campaign's launch on social media, any mention of sound cadence was removed. Many other industry professionals were later quick to note that the Kickstarter also linked to a 19-page PDF listing all the titles that apparently the app's creators were, quote, in talks with to acquire the rights for, only for many owners of said licenses coming out to say that such talks hadn't happened. This included Sean Kleckner, the president of Right Stuff and Nozomi Entertainment, as well as people from some other companies who were being put off by having their properties shown in such a way, some immediately requesting that their shows be removed. In this now deleted tweet from the AnimeTube Twitter account responding to Sean, the only thing shown was that they had messaged him on LinkedIn and were waiting for his response. This does not amount to being in talks with people. I cold message people all the time, but that doesn't mean they agree with, care about, or even saw what I had to say. I mean, I wish they did. The PDF listing was later removed due to it causing confusion, to quote their Discord server, and they are right. Not only does this list contain high and low profile shows that are scattered across many distributors already, such as Netflix, Funimation, and Crunchyroll, but some of the listed shows were originals produced for and funded by specific platforms. More on that later. And by the way, that's not even counting the handful of titles that are trapped in licensing hell or their own specific frustrating legal situations. They did claim later that this list of anime was a wish list of sorts, and that including it was a mistake, which might be a bit of an understatement. Again, the Kickstarter was asking for $50,000, but if you scrolled down, it said that $40,000 would have gone into the base development of the app, while the remaining $10,000 will go to, quote, professional fees, which would have included business development, translation, and legal fees for finalizing licensing contracts. Now, I'm not a web developer, nor do I claim to know the specifics of overseas licensing. We don't work in that field. However, we've spoken to multiple people with experience throughout the years, both during and prior to this situation. Just purchasing the rights to one of these shows on this list, that looks like they just copied it alphabetically off of my anime list, while also putting some on there twice, in today's streaming climate, would cost well beyond what is implied by AnimeTube. We don't know the exact numbers, and prices may vary between properties, but it's heavily implied that the cost of just one show's license would be quite an investment on its own. In fact, part of the reason why so many platforms are now being credited as co-producers on shows is because funding it directly might actually be cheaper than the licensing fee. We have a friend named Kanapa who has already done numerous videos talking about such things that you can check out for more detail. We'll leave a link in the description, but either everyone else is lying, or AnimeTube has found a way to transform the licensing business around their goals and resources. They do mention they have close connections with a successful Japanese business developer named Hironori, and they've met with a member of one of the largest conglomerates of anime producers in Japan. But if they have the capital and connection to make all these great things happen, was a Kickstarter really necessary? It seems like their main goal was to just get the app launched and running, with an implication that they'd make other Kickstarters later to help with said licensing fees. But for something of this scale asking for so little money? Is this all just an elaborate plan to bring some guy's waifu to life with AI? It's worth noting that this app did previously have another Kickstarter that was abandoned before this one, but again, more on that later. Some anime websites already operate with a free version and paid options, but I think it's that potentially giant catalog of hits that would be the real selling point for people. The more we dug into this, the more we began to wonder how much knowledge about licensing this team has, because in the wake of industry pros coming out and pointing out stuff like the quote generous wording of business relations, as well as the actual possibility of some of these promises being met, almost every response has left me with more questions than answers. On an also now deleted FAQ question from their Kickstarter page, when asked about whether it costs hundreds, thousands, or millions of dollars to license the show, they claimed it wasn't true and cited a 2012 lawsuit regarding DVD and Blu-ray distribution, which has nothing to do with how modern-day streaming licenses are handled. Then, in a statement they issued to Anime News Network, the founder, George Weller, claimed they specifically contacted the Japanese companies and were confused about why US distributors expected to get contacted first. Aside from the fact that their Twitter account already mentioned contacting Sean via LinkedIn, that is how you're supposed to handle things, especially when it comes to streaming exclusives. Weller claimed they got that information from the Association of Japanese Animations, but any initial reference to the AJA on the Kickstarter was also deleted later. Noticing a pattern here yet? Don't worry, it gets better. The full article is linked in the description and it's very thorough, so please check it out if you're tired of hearing the sound of my voice. Regardless, things weren't going super smoothly the longer this went on, especially as more websites and influencers began pointing out these potential concerns. Merryweather had pulled their support for the app after reviewing everything, and according to Bigger Cake, the Kickstarter lost a few backers and almost $10,000 in a single day. Then the Kickstarter got funding suspended, the app's Twitter account was temporarily deleted, the Discord group was deleted, and now everyone is just left even more confused regarding what this was supposed to even be. Weller did state in the AnimeTube Discord that they are trying to combat the suspension, and they have since put out a public statement. While an article from Vice.com about the situation has since come out, with their Twitter also coming back. There will obviously be updates to this situation moving forward, which we will make note of in the pinned comment down below. It would be good if something positive came out of all of this, but this is just scratching the surface, so we'll link to some threads and resources in the description as well, outlining all the questions that are still dangling. So with all that window dressing out of the way, what's going on here? Is this a super ambitious venture from people who maybe didn't have all the info? In principle, I don't dislike the idea of AnimeTube. In fact, some of their goals look really innovative and I'd welcome them if they actually came to fruition. The Kickstarter leaned into the frustrations that anime fans are dealing with in this current streaming climate. Like we said at the start, the current streaming apps are riddled with technical flaws, and business practices like exclusive streaming licenses and region locking make it a lot harder for so many fans to access their favorite shows. So I can understand if this was made by a group of ill-informed, yet good-intentioned people who just wanted to provide a reasonable alternative to what is going on right now. And maybe if they started smaller or been more transparent, things would be different. I imagine some of the people donating to this Kickstarter probably were anime fans in these neglected regions who have been wanting a legitimate way to watch the shows they love or even support the suffering Japanese animators they keep reading about online. Similar to other industries, there are growing monopolies in anime right now, so more competition is always welcome. Compared to the almost unlimited access and availability of piracy, official anime distribution really does come off like a bunch of people tripping over their own red tape. And although I am a filthy dub defender who relies on big companies to hire recording studios, I'm not going to argue that all of that red tape has to stay because I'm still learning about it. But it's probably going to take more than what AnimeTube's Kickstarter thought it would, given everything we've discussed today. Their FAQs even mentioned that they had not confirmed what regions it would be available in, and their desire to be the definitive platform that would hold all the licenses was always going to be unrealistic at best. Especially considering the timeline they plan to make everything available. Even taking this Kickstarter on its best terms, it didn't really feel like they would feasibly be able to address those aforementioned problems. But, at worst, maybe they knew exactly what they were doing. We mentioned before that this isn't AnimeTube's first Kickstarter. Last month they had started one with an initial goal that was much higher, though still maybe not as high as it should have been, to accomplish what they wanted to do. Nowadays, Kickstarters do relaunch sometimes with revised goals, and Weller did mention some reasons it was cancelled in the ANN article. However, he doesn't seem to mention that this initial AnimeTube campaign was copyright claimed by Viz Media. George Weller is the CEO of GameFace LLC, which seemed to be the main company developing the AnimeTube app. This company seems to have ties to other LLCs, which have apps that have since been pulled off Microsoft and Xbox app stores. Maybe it's because these apps seem to essentially be aggregates for pirate streams. Obviously, this Kickstarter was a step up from that, but even it appears to have some non-original art assets that were claimed to be original. It's also a little odd that questions about any of these factors would get blocked or deleted. In another now deleted FAQ, they specifically addressed blocking people on social media due to, quote, not having time for negativity. Obviously, there will always be trolls, but when there are industry cohorts who are trying to understand where you got your information from, it isn't a good look. Plus, unless there are extenuating circumstances, the way all of this was handled probably means that a majority of these licensors won't ever want to associate with this brand now. So with social media being deleted, the Kickstarter getting suspended, and prominent industry folks disavowing how everything was handled, what's even the point of talking about this anymore, you might be asking? Honestly, it feels like AnimeTube was bound to happen eventually, because the past few years have proven that there is a market for spreading misinformation and convenient narratives about the industry, even when it's baseless in part or in full. I will never claim to fully understand AnimeTube's intentions, just like how I can't say with absolute certainty why their promotional video features phrases like, "we won't crunch on your roll." Call me a pessimist, but looking at the Kickstarter on its face and the responses from those involved, it does nothing but make parallels in my mind to other entities who tried to claim more of an understanding of how the anime business world works than they actually do. The only difference is that this seemed to take the form of a Kickstarter rather than YouTube videos or blogs. And again, maybe this is just me, but I have a strong suspicion that despite appealing to those who do want genuine improvement in the industry, another group of people this Kickstarter really wanted to win over included fan bases who just wanted to punish the industry at large alongside specific people currently working within it. And no, those are not always the exact same thing, no matter how much they might pretend they are. This isn't even the first time in recent memory it was claimed that a new service would usurp the current streaming market. Anyone remember AnimeLog? When you have an entity whose responses to criticism or fact-checking is to block and or double down that they know more than experts do without providing a decent reason to believe that what they're trying to sell you isn't impossible, look, I'm not saying it's a scam, but if something seems like it's too good to be true, you should probably check first, because sadly, there's a good chance that it is. Personally though, I think I'm gonna go with the overwhelming amount of industry pros on this one because, and this may be hard to hear, but the current streaming climate really couldn't allow AnimeTube to succeed, even without all the bad press. All their responses did for me personally was further highlight a major disconnect between what they claimed to do and how to actually do it. If they really wanted to reassure people that what they were doing was legit, ultimately, they missed the mark. Obviously, the solution would be to change the streaming environment, however, I'm not smart enough to know how to restructure a whole industry in a way that could make it possible. You could argue that all this backlash from industry veterans is just the old guard getting scared that someone more competent could steal their turf. Of course, they would say it's a scam, right? Maybe it's like that one scene in Knives Out where everyone instantly turns on the protagonist when they find out she received the full inheritance. And heck, look at the industry people we've worked with and talked to, or the topics that we've covered in videos. We even made excuses for Nagatoro saying sus, so of course it's in our best interest to want AnimeTube to fail, right? We're only half serious, obviously, but if you're gonna be that skeptical about us, can't you at least apply that same level of skepticism to the way this Kickstarter was handled? We didn't make this video because we wanted to troll or for clout. We did it because we wanted to express a concern. Whether it's people who are specifically trying to stick it to the industry, or well-meaning fans that were genuinely uninformed, we have no control over what people do with their money. Just like with all of our other videos, we try to highlight and inform. But if there's a chance that this video can get someone to think a little bit harder about the situation now, or use this as prep the next time a similar proposal gets floated, no matter what form that it might take, and then to decide for themselves whether or not it's worth supporting, then we think all of this will have been worth it.
So instead of supporting AnimeTube, donate to my Kickstarter, which aims to provide the localization industry with the best schedules, wages, and technologies, all for the purposes of creating the best subs and dubs imaginable. We're talking modifying the lip flaps, remote recording from around the world, pay comparable to American cartoon voiceover, 24/7 correspondence with Japanese creators for creative approval, all the time in the world for research, quality control and beyond, seamless typesetting to translate all on-screen text with minimal distraction, and as the final stretch goal, an elite squad of ninjas who will stalk production committee members till they pay the Japanese animators what they're worth. I call it Anime Total Immersion Translation Studio, or Anime Tits.
So yeah, that was our breakdown and thoughts on the AnimeTube situation so far. There was some specific information we weren't privy to during this video's development, so we recommend checking out other people such as Yazzie, who also covered this topic. More information will most likely continue to come out, and knowing our luck, something big has probably already happened while this video was uploading. So again, make sure to check out that pinned comment for any updates. Also, like we said, we'll leave links to some related info in the description down below, and major thanks to the individuals on screen who took a look at this script for us. With that said, what do you all think of this situation? Were you satisfied with how everything panned out? Would you seriously donate to Anime Tits? Leave a comment below and tell us your thoughts. This has been the Cartoon Cypher, and until next time.